It's Sophia Smallstorm back again with a podcast in mid-March, and we're actually approaching what is called the spring equinox, which comes in about 2 days. And spring is here, actually. Pollen is flying everywhere. I always like to give a little climate weather report at the beginning of these shows. I have with me today somebody who has become one of my favorite people to talk to. This is Dr. Rima Laibow. I have learned so much from her. I've done a couple of podcasts with her already. And today we're going to start out with a discussion. She's going to tell us about the very tragic events surrounding the passing of her beloved partner, General Bert Stubblebine, which did not have to happen. And this story she'll tell us. And then we'll just travel into other subjects, hopefully, that we have already familiarized ourselves with in discussion. She's so smart. Rima Laibow is a trained medical doctor, a psychiatrist, but someone who never prescribed drugs to her patients and went into alternative medicine and has the ability, in my experience, to explain anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, biology, body functions in ways that almost nobody else can. So it is always a pleasure to talk to her, whether privately or on air, and today we're together on air. So welcome, Dr. Rima Laibow. How are you?
Thank you so much for those kind words, Sophia. I must say it's mutual. Each time I speak with you, I learn more and more, and it's always a joy. But I have to disagree with one thing that you said. You said that I went into alternative medicine. No, I didn't. I went into good medicine by never practicing allopathic or conventional pharmaceutical medicine. There is an alternative in medicine, and it's the poor alternative. It's conventional, allopathic, drug-based medicine, and it shouldn't be allowed to touch you or the people that you love. There are better ways, except in the emergency room and the surgical suite, when the drugs have a place. That's my view after almost 50 years of practicing drug-free medicine and treating cataclysmically ill people, often after they've been told there's nothing we can do, get your affairs in order, learn to live with the pain, you're going to die, whatever. They've been told by the allopathic fraternity, which is intentionally dumbed and numbed and diluted by the people who control it, often without the knowledge of the allopathic community. So I must say, I don't practice alternative medicine. I practice good medicine. And by the way I do that, because I am full-time as the medical director of the Natural Solutions Foundation, a health freedom organization devoted to the radical idea that you own your own body, the corporation doesn't, and the state doesn't. So the Natural Solutions Foundation has a lot of work to do, and I hope you'll help us do it. But I do offer consultations for those people who would like to talk to me privately, electronically, and perhaps I can offer something to them.
All right, I have 2 questions. First,
yes, ma'am.
Before I forget it, is how do they reach you for consultations? Because I was going to refer somebody to you, and I was poking around your website, and I couldn't see how this person could reach you. So can you tell us exactly how that would be done?
Absolutely. We are continually attacked by NSA and Department of Homeland Security and God knows whom else electronically. So our websites go down and our communications are interfered with. So the best way is to use what I'm going to give you, which is my private email, which is REL and the word eyes, EYES 3, RELEYES 3, and put the word RELEYES 3 at gmail.com, and put the word consult as the subject. And I'll send you the information about how that's done, and we'll go from there. So it's RELEYES 3 at gmail.com. Why am I giving out my private email? Why not? There is no reason to have a shield between me and and who I am and what I do. So you now have my private email.
Okay, great. I'm glad that with your permission, people can write to you at RELEYES3@gmail.com for private consultations. And I will tell you this, Dr. Rima Laibow is quite something. She has a very deep grasp of how our health works, and she will definitely, in my opinion, be able to guide people in the right direction, if not do absolute wonders for them. For this is what I have come to believe from talking to you for all these months that I've known you. And I got to know you very late in my life, which is a bit dismaying, but better late than never. So
thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, of course, you of all people deserve to be hailed as someone who really has her head screwed on right about medicine and health in the body. Now, I'm going to ask you this question again because maybe I didn't understand. So, good medicine, I understand. You practice good medicine. But then what is alternative medicine?
I don't believe there is any such thing. You either are practicing good medicine or you're practicing allopathic medicine.
Okay, I see what you meant. Yes. I thought that somehow there was this other field called alternative medicine, but you weren't in it. So yeah, no, that's good. It's perhaps a misnomer to call good medicine alternative medicine.
Exactly. And one of the things that we people who have, shall we say, a wider understanding of many realities than the commonly engineered, propagandized realities that we're fed, one of the things that we people need to do is take back the language. When we are marginalized by language, for instance, alternative medicine, well, what's alternative is not really real. It's kind of something out there on the side, and it's not really that important, and it's kind of almost accidental. No. It is very important to take back meaningful language. Language is used as a tool of propaganda. We need to use it as a tool of truth in every area, not just the designation of what is good medicine and what is not. I'd like to tell you in one sentence, if I may, this is not what we thought we'd be talking about, but with your permission, I'd like to give you my basic philosophy of medicine and of the body, mind, spirit, its operations, and why the kind of medicine that I practice and that other people like me practice is good medicine. May I do that?
Yes.
The body, and when I say the body, I mean the mind, the spirit, the entire entity. There is no mind-body connection because there is only a mind-body. Everything that's in the mind is in the body. Everything that's in the body is in the mind. And the heart and the spirit are part of that whole entity. So when I say the body, I mean the whole ball of wax. So understand that's my intention. The body has only one way of operating, and that is to try to learn to solve problems. Anything that happens to the body that conventional medicine calls a symptom, a disease, a problem, a condition, it is inevitably the body's best attempt at solving the problem or the situation that it's confronted with, whether it's nutritional or infectious or immunological or environmental or genetic. The body is trying to solve the problem. So instead of suppressing what it is that the body is doing, it's my job as a physician practicing good medicine to understand what the body is trying to accomplish and to give it a better way to do that by working at the root level at which this problem, this disease, this degenerative condition, this macular degeneration or cancer or whatever is being created, and to solve that problem, manage the discomfort that the disease or condition might be causing. So if somebody's in pain, we have to deal with that. But it's not the pain that's the problem. It's the reason that the pain is resulting that we have to deal with. And when we do that, then the body, the mind-body system, the heart, the spirit, the reality, can repair itself on its own terms by being nurtured, supported, and enhanced and empowered to do so. And that might take nutrition, it might take frequency, it might take detoxification, it might take neurobiofeedback, it might take psychotherapy, it might take God knows what. But the point is that when you help the body to function better, it does. And suddenly, without drugs, you now are experiencing radiant, robust well-being, health, vitality. Our genetic and physical and spiritual heritage can be experienced by us. So that's why what I do and what people like me do with folks who have issues or don't want to get sick, if it's preventive, that's even better. That's why what we do is so powerful. And we see miracles in our office that somebody on a daily basis, that somebody who is practicing drug symptom suppression, enzyme poisoning medicine can't even dream could be a reality.
Well, that's a very hopeful message and a very good philosophy to have that needs to be spread. You know, I wish more people had it. And because you came from the allopathic world and you have seen the light, so to speak, and you have begun to, well, not begun, you have been for 50 years or whatever the quantity of time has been practicing this right, real, sensible medicine. You may be one of the few compared to the multitudes out there doing the opposite. But what I wanted to ask you was maybe you could shed light on this term integrative medicine, because some of these MDs, you come across their names. Sometimes people are referred to you and you're told by the friend who's referring, this doctor practices integrative medicine. And I assume that to be a mixture of allopathic and holistic or progressive or this alternative, whatever you want to call it, good medicine. But wouldn't it be fair to say that if you're going to mix the two, one type of medicine is doing no good at all and is just going to counter the effects of the other?
Well, I'm perfectly willing to be a curmudgeon, and I'm very happy to be a curmudgeon about this issue. There is no such thing as integrative medicine. There is no such thing as complementary medicine. There is no such thing as CAM, complementary and alternative medicine. That says there's a really good kind of medicine. It's called drug medicine. And then there's this other game playing over here. And we'll put them together and we'll do a little massage and we'll do a little reflexology and we'll do a little piddly stuff. And the real stuff, the stuff that floats hospitals financially, for example, chemotherapy and cardiovascular surgery, that's the real stuff. And that's what we really want to do. And even well-meaning, somewhat mush-headed physicians who kind of saw a little bit of the light say, well, but I don't want to abandon all this stuff that I am an expert in, because once you're an expert, you're emotionally invested in being an expert. And if there's stuff you don't know, then you're not an expert anymore. And so they try to make a Rube Goldberg machine that is so kludgy that it can't work. And after it doesn't work, then we're going to go to the real stuff, take this drug. That's nonsense. You either understand the basic principle that I've just been talking about, or you don't. Now, after the studies came out in the Journal of the American Medical Association and the New England Journal of Medicine that showed that people were spending more money out of pocket for so-called alternative medicine, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, etc., than they were spending on allopathic medicine that's insurance covered and drug company supported and taught, that more money was coming out of people's unreimbursable funds for that kind of medicine than for allopathic medicine. Suddenly, all the medical schools and all the hospitals decided that they too practiced alternative medicine. They too practiced complementary and alternative CAM medicine and integrative medicine. And they set up these ridiculous systems whereby people get trivial treatments that aren't designed to do anything. Not that these modalities can't do profound things, but they're offered in a way to maintain them as trivial. And then when that doesn't work well, then we do the chemotherapy, then we do the the bypass surgery, which is as fraudulent as chemotherapy. Then we do the other high-producing things. But we do the integrative things, and wouldn't you like to go over there and have a massage? So I see that as an intentional money-garnering fraud on the part of the allopathic medical system. Oh, really? They would do fraudulent things that wouldn't do good for people? Uh-huh. They are based on fraudulent things that don't do good for people, including vaccines. And I hope we get to talk about the fact that everyone listening to the sound of your voice and my voice has an exemption, a legally protected exemption to any and all vaccines, no matter who tells them they have to have it, whether it's federally mandated, whether it's mandated by the state of California, or any other state, whether it's mandated by the school district, whether it's mandated by the hospital for which you work, and the mandate is privatized. Everyone already has a legally protected and valid vaccine exemption so long as they exercise it properly. If you exercise it improperly, you don't have any exemption at all, and you will get vaccinated, or your child will get vaccinated, or taken away from you if you don't vaccinate the child and then vaccinated. So this is of enormous importance, because what we're talking about is informed consent. And as my now dead husband, and you'll forgive me if I am tearful, as my now dead husband, Major General Albert N. Stubblebine III, wrote several months before he was killed unnecessarily by the lack of informed consent after 6 months of my hand-to-hand daily combat with the allopathic medical system in hospital. As he wrote, informed consent is the defining issue of the 21st century. And what that means is that the corporation, the state, the merged corporation state, that is the fascist system. You will remember that Benito Mussolini defined fascism as the merger of the corporation and the state. The globalist system has determined that it owns your body. Now, there are two kinds of people in the world. There are those people who have complete autonomy over their own bodies, and they make every decision about what may and must and might and must not go into their bodies and happen to their bodies in terms of their food, in terms of any drugs, in terms of radiation, in terms of vaccines. Those people make those decisions for themselves, and those they take care of, for instance, parents for children. And there are people who cannot make those decisions for themselves or do not make those decisions. The first group is what I call free men and women. The second group has an ancient term that is applied to anyone whose body is owned by someone else. And that word is simple and sharp and meaningful. It is slave. You are either one or the other. There is nothing in the middle. It is, I told you I was a curmudgeon. It is quite binary. So if you do not take your own health into your own hands, if you do not determine what happens to your body or the bodies of those for whom you are the responsible person, you are agreeing to the globalist enslavement that will eventually result in your genetic harm, which we call genomicide, because your genetic material is under direct attack from the globalist community. And you will also be depopulated, or if you are allowed to survive, be enslaved. Those are hard, harsh words, but horrifyingly, they are hard, harsh facts. And if you read Agenda 21, which you can do at one of our websites, truthaboutagenda21.com, and it's harder and harder to find the actual Agenda 21 document. We have it there. If you read that and the free ebook that is available there, you will see what I'm talking about. If you read the new, updated, on steroids version of Agenda 21 called Agenda 2030, you will see that the plan is for every aspect of your life to be totally and irretrievably controlled unless you are part of the very small neo-aristocracy, which is free of those constraints and can travel where it likes and can eat what it likes and can educate its children fully and can feed its children fully under Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, which is the policy, the signed, ratified policy of most countries in the world, including the United States. Children are not to be fully educated because those people who are educated, and I quote, consume more than their fair share of the world's resources. Children are not to be fully nourished because, and I quote, those children who are fully nourished and reach their full genetic potential consume more than their fair share of the world's resources. And who indeed determines what their fair share is when you create a psychology of scarcity and control with an underclass, as in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Read the first 3 chapters of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, and you will see that we are being turned into the disposable Delta workers. It's really quite clear. So medicine and lack of informed consent is a very important part of how that program is carried out through vaccination, through indoctrination, through drugs, and through a continuing assault on your genetic matrix and that of your born and unborn children, should there be such.
Okay, now you have told us many, many things here, and I'm going to back us up a little bit. Now, this idea of the state owning your body, what happens when you have an incident that's acute enough that means you get trundled off in an ambulance to a hospital, and let's say nobody accompanies you who's going to be your advocate, somebody who would be a family member or a friend. You're by yourself, you're enrolled in the system, and their obligation, according to them, is to take life-saving measures, no matter who you are.
Or to take life-ending measures, no matter who you are. Let me answer that question. It's a very good question. First of all, let me tell you the story of what happened to my husband. General Burt was the president and one of the 2 founders. I was the other founder of the Natural Solutions Foundation. And by the way, our website, if it's working between attacks, is Dr. Rima, R-I-M-A, truthreports.com. Dr. Rima, truthreports.com. General Burt was a healthy, hearty, unimpaired 86-year-old man who was, after all, my patient. So he was perfectly nourished. And we were living in Chile, active in the United States, active globally, living in Chile for a variety of reasons that had to do with another story. But we were living in Chile, at Santiago, which is a lovely place to live, by the way. And he started losing weight. He lost 44 pounds in 3.5 months. So he went from 174 pounds, by the way, taking no medication, no diabetes, no heart disease, no nothing. He developed a difficulty swallowing, and therefore he could not consume enough food to maintain his weight. He lost 44 pounds in about 3.5 months and became very weak. And of course, his immune system also became very weak. And in order to get the kind of natural health care that he needed, the acupuncture, the homeopathy, the nutritional medicine, the chiropractic care, Atlas orthogonal care, etc., that he needed, I couldn't do that for him in Chile because it's there, but it's not very well developed. It's derivative. I couldn't find the geniuses and the innovators that he needed because he was really quite depleted. So with reluctance, we came to the United States because I prefer to be active in what's happening here politically, but not living in the United States because of the things that I'm sure you've talked about in other shows about what's happening to this country and freedoms and expression and so on.
Let me ask you one question, please. You said that he had difficulty swallowing. Now, there was no obstruction or anything?
No. That we could not find the source of it. There was no obstruction. There was no mass. It was idiopathic. Nobody knew why he was having difficulty swallowing, but it was increasing rapidly. And he was losing a cataclysmic amount of weight. He actually looked like somebody who had just gotten out of Auschwitz. It was really quite severe. So I decided it was worth coming to the United States. I decided on a Thursday. We were on a plane on Saturday. We got here. He was receiving those treatments. He was getting better. That was on August 20th. He was getting better, but not better enough. Now, I have to tell you a little bit of the story that seems like a diversion. I wrote to a friend of mine who is a massively advanced doctor in India, Dr. Monapa Hegde, and I said, I've just come to the United States with Bert. He's quite ill. I don't know whether I'll be able to get to India with him for our 5-day symposium in Mysore, India. We'll do it electronically if I cannot do it physically there. And the symposium was reclaiming science and essentially taking science back to prevent genomicide, a major international congress that I was honored to be asked to plan, but obviously if my husband was in the hospital, that wasn't going to happen. So August 31st, he wrote to me and he said, contact this doctor. He has a nutrient that will save Bert's life. So I immediately contacted him. I drove to meet him. He gave me some bottles of his magic substance, and I said, what is this? And he gave me his scientific presentation. He had brought his laptop for that purpose. And I realized that I had in my hand a new class of nutrient that instructs the DNA to turn on and turn off the appropriate feedback loops. That's one of the things that food and nutrition can do, and this nutrient was brand new and was constructed to do that specifically. Okay, put that on the shelf. So on August 31st, I drove back, and I got back at about 10:30 at night. A few hours later, on September 1st, Bert collapsed in the bathroom, and I had two choices, Sophia. I could hold him in my arms while he died, or I could commit him to allopathic medicine on an emergency basis. So I wasn't prepared for him to die, and he wasn't. I called the ambulance, and he was brought to the local hospital where his nutritional physician wasn't attending, and he had said to me, if anything cataclysmic happens, have him taken to JFK Medical Center in Edison, New Jersey. So that's what I did. And we came there. Bert was wheeled in, and the preliminary assessment was made. His doctor was called. And immediately, Sophia, immediately, before they knew him, before they had fully assessed him, before the chest x-rays were back, I was being told, he's 87, he's had a good life, let him die. And I said, no. How do you know he's had a good life? You never saw him before. He's still on the gurney that the ambulance brought him in on. What are you talking about? No, he's not going to die.
They actually said those words? Let him die? They said that?
You know, we can help him pass on. We can suppress his respiration. We can withhold food and water, and it'll be an easy way for him to pass on.
Wow.
And I said, what are you, crazy? No, I have his power of attorney. I'm his significant other. I'm his decision maker, and I do not agree to that. And on every piece of paper that I signed, and, you have to sign a lot of pieces of paper, on every single piece of paper that I signed, I wrote these words: all vaccines refused. And I initialed it. And then I signed the paper, and I whipped out the Advance Vaccine Directive card that each and every person in this country who understands the dangers and the irrationality and the ungoodness of vaccines needs. They need one for themselves and one for each child or other protected person. And I'll tell you how to get that. I'll give you a website where you can read a little about it, if that too is working. And that is tinyurl.com/AVD card. AVD stands for Advance vaccine directive. It is a living will, and it is legally valid if you assert your informed consent correctly. And this card asserts it correctly in 126 countries, those countries which have signed and ratified the Geneva Convention. 126 countries offer you the legal protection for your informed consent. Right. Well, so there he is in the hospital, and before the ink is dry on my permission signature for anything, they're already getting ready to kill him off because he's 87, and elderly people are expensive to the system. And we are in a cost containment reality, we are in a depopulation reality, and we are in a cost containment reality. Vaccinating people, quote, bringing them up to date when they come into a hospital with all of the vaccines and all of the mercury and all of the aluminum and all of the fluoride and all of the stealth viruses is another way of cost containment. It kills people. So I refused all of that, and I was very, 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 very specific about what I would allow for him. The diagnosis was aspiration pneumonia because he was coughing and choking. He aspirated food or beverage, and that caused pneumonia, bacterial and a chemical pneumonia. And he had septicemia because his immune system was so weak because of the cachexia or lack of nourishment. His bacteria leaked into the bloodstream and then they multiplied. People over 80 who go to an emergency room have a less than 20% chance of emerging, no matter what they went to the emergency for. People who have septicemia over 80 have about a 5% chance of living. People who have aspiration pneumonia over 80 have about a 5% chance of living. So he had age, he had aspiration pneumonia, and he had septicemia, not on his side. And I said, nonsense. Of course he's going to recover, because my experience has been that I've been able to cure the people that these guys give up on routinely. So I had this magic nutrient, and it's in the form of a spray, and I started spraying it into the cavity of his mouth. It was the only way I could get anything into him because he had a great big plastic tube down his trachea. And he was unconscious. So I was spraying this stuff multiple times a day, and he didn't die, and he started getting better. And every single doctor, and he had about 12 doctors on his case, every single doctor and the partners of every single doctor at that hospital, at least once a week, so we had 36 or 40 people who at least once a week felt it incumbent upon them to tell me, let him die. You should let him die. And in the chart it says wife is in denial, wife is psychotic, wife needs palliative care. The palliative care team should be brought in. Wife needs psychiatric counseling. Wife should see the social worker, because wife was saying, no, he's going to recover. And by God, he started to recover. And the nursing care pushed him down, and they wouldn't feed him. So here is a cachectic patient who is made more cachectic. His doctor and I tried to get vitamin C into his veins because we knew that intravenous vitamin C would have him out of the hospital in 3 to 4 weeks. His doctor thinks 4 weeks, I think 3 weeks. Okay, I'm willing to say I'm wrong. It would have been 4 weeks, and then a couple of weeks in rehab. They would not allow vitamin C into his veins. It's not in the formulary. It's this, it's that. No, we can't do that. Why? Because it would work, and then people wouldn't die, and also they wouldn't be able to do the wildly expensive treatments and give the wildly expensive drugs. Ultimately, I finally, after he was transferred to another hospital, and he refused to die, and he refused to want to die, they would say to him, are you ready to go? And he'd say, hell no, I have a mission. Dr. Rima and I have work to do, and I am committed to that work. Why would I want to die? I mean, that's sort of a clear indication that he doesn't want to die. But the system was, here's the dichotomy. The allopathic medical system, in order to be validated, had to have him die. the good medical system, in order to be validated, had to have him have a chance at not dying, and he just damn wouldn't die. And every time he would climb out of the pit, bad nursing care and bad medical decisions would be made to push him down into the pit. Now, I finally, after 3.5 weeks, I got a stomach tube put in. He couldn't swallow anything because he had a tube in his mouth. I got a stomach tube put in, and with the consent and encouragement of his nutritional physician who was attending him, I started pouring food into him 4 times a day that I prepared every morning with nutrients and protein and all kinds of healthy things. I practice nutritional medicine, Sophia. I have a couple of tricks up my sleeve and quite a lot of wear on my treads. I knew what I was doing. And he came back to life after 34 days in the ICU. And on November 30th, the medical director of the hospital, Dr. William Oser, prevented me from giving him nutrition. He was breathing on his own. We were about to take the tracheotomy tube out because he didn't need it anymore. He became so weak in the 10 days that they were messing around, pretending that they were actually working with us, but they were determined not to work with us. In those 10 days, he no longer could breathe on his own because he was once again starving. I went to court. I hired a lawyer. Ralph Fusatola is the third trustee of the Natural Solutions Foundation. He's an attorney. We brought in another attorney, and I got a temporary restraining order from a judge preventing the hospital from preventing me from feeding my husband, whose doctor I am, whose wife I am, and whose power of attorney I am. And so I resumed feeding him, and son of a bitch if he didn't get well, if he didn't start to recover, still needing the vitamin C. And it wasn't until he was transferred to another hospital that we were finally, after 6 months of hand-to-hand daily combat against the allopathic medical system, we were finally able to give him an infusion of vitamin C intravenously, and the transformation was instantaneous. The next day, he had another infusion of vitamin C, and it was even better, and he was no longer a man who was on the verge of dying. His energy field had changed, his vitality had changed, his function was now returning to normal. Then the weekend came, Saturday and Sunday, and not much happens on Saturday and Sunday, so we couldn't possibly give him a vitamin C infusion, even though I had the vitamin C and they had the bags. Oh no, we had to wait until Monday. On Sunday night, my Vitamix, in which I liquefied his feedings, had broken. He was so well, I said, "Sweetheart, I'm going to run over to the store. They have a Vitamix. I'll be back in an hour, and I'll be able to use it again tomorrow for you, because this morning our Vitamix gave up the ghost." I left, and I had a horrible feeling in the store as I was standing at checkout. I called the hospital, and they said 5 minutes ago he had a coronary problem. I raced back, and he was coding. That means his heart had stopped. Now, back a couple of months before that, in November, and we're now in February at this point in the story, in November, his heart had stopped twice, once for 32 seconds and once for 6 seconds. And as they were racing in to do the thing with the paddles and the injections and so on, his heart came back. A nurse came up to me, a very kind, caring woman who's just, a useful idiot in the system, came up to me and she had tears in her eyes and she said, "Bert is trying to die." And I looked at her and I said, "Elizabeth, I have the same data that you do available to me, and I can draw a very different conclusion from it. It looks to me like Bert is trying not to die." And she said, "Oh, I never thought of that." That's how the system captures the mind. So he came back twice, and I said to him, "Why did you come back?" And he said, "For you, for our work." So this was not a man who wanted to die. I ran off to buy the Vitamix. I was told that he was having a coronary problem. I came racing back. He was in the middle of a code. We were holding each other. We were kissing each other, loving each other. And the team did their code stuff pretty well. And he came back. And they said, "Gee, we've never had a code before, code blue. Some hospitals, they call it a code red. We've never had a code blue where people were hugging and loving each other while somebody died and undied. I said, right, this is an unusual circumstance. That's how it should be. So he came back, and then he coded again. They took him down to the intensive care unit, and he coded again and again and died on his birthday. And I was there holding him. Now, was he interfered with? Did somebody do something while I was out? Possible. Do I know that? No. Or was the damage from not having what he actually needed, which was the intravenous vitamin C, so great over such a long time that finally even his heart could not survive? I'll take that second one, because the first one is such an intolerable thought that somebody actually did something. Let's say they didn't. Anyhow, he died on his birthday with me holding him, as he couldn't maintain life because he didn't have what he needed. And what he needed from the very beginning was what he wanted to be given to him, which was food, which they withheld, and which was vitamin C. Now, my advocacy is not for vitamin C. I've used vitamin C in my practice intravenously for almost 50 years, and it's a magical substance, but there are lots of magical substances. The other magical substance that I was giving him was this special nutrient, which we hope to be making available soon to people who want to use it. And I continued to use it, and I used my nano silver. My Dr. Rima recommends nano silver, and he kept getting septicemia, and then instead of succumbing to it as he was supposed to, he would recover in 18 hours. The septicemia would be gone, and the doctors would say, wow, we've never seen that before. And I would say, it's the nano silver. I'm giving him nano silver in his feeding tube. It's as if he was swallowing it and spraying it into his mouth. Of course, he's not having the bacterial disease any longer, because the resistant organisms, like the unresistant organisms, can't survive the presence of the nano silver and the immune support. And they just said, wow, we never heard of that. I said to a surgeon who was working on him, wouldn't you like to be the only surgeon whose patients never get hospital-borne infections? He said, wow, how would that happen? I said, you use nano silver for your patients. He said, is there any science on that? I said, over 1,000 papers. He said, oh, well, but I never heard of it. And that was the end of that. And that's what happens to the minds of people who think that they're going to be doctors and wind up being useful idiots, robots in the service of the allopathic model, which is there's a symptom, we suppress it. There's another symptom, we suppress it. Drugs cause side effects, we give more drugs. That is illogical. But that is the drug-related depopulation system that otherwise well-meaning people find themselves servants to. And if they wake up personally for themselves and their families, i.e., 65% of pediatricians don't vaccinate themselves, their children, or their wives. Ooh, why is that? Well, they make more than half of their income from vaccinating your children. But they're not going to do that to their children because they know. Oncologists who develop cancer generally don't accept chemotherapy. Why? Because they know. But they have what's called the concession, which means that they and dialysis doctors are the only doctors for whom it's legal for them to sell the drugs directly to their patients. So they make an ungodly amount of money on the drugs that they're selling to their patients, but they surely wouldn't put that crap in their own bodies. You're dealing with people who are trained to be deceitful and not even notice their own deceit. That's how profound the brainwashing and propaganda is. I know, because I survived it. It just didn't work on me. So, General Burt died. General Burt was a noble, kind, very special man, was a very special healer and a very special leader. My heart is broken, but my work remains to do our work. which is to make sure that you have health freedom for any decision that you choose to make for your body, no matter what it is. Even if it's a stupid decision, it's your decision, and you must have the free flow of information to make that decision. You will make fewer stupid decisions. We all need information to make fewer stupid decisions. And we all do sometimes make stupid decisions. You have to have the access to anything that you want to use for your own health and well-being. You have to have the information to know what is in your food, whether it's genetically modified or not. You have to have the information to know what pesticides and other hideous, harmful chemicals like herbicides such as Roundup have been used on your food, whether you're being exposed to microwave and other radiation, to have clean air and water without chemtrails. That's your right as a human being. That's informed consent. And that's what the Natural Solutions Foundation fights for. And that's why we're attacked continually. That's why I say, if our website hasn't been attacked, it'll be up. By the way, our Facebook page is Facebook/Natural Solutions Foundation. Please go there, like us, share us. And if you would rather not have vaccine mandates that you have to struggle against, then you need to support what the Trump team, we're not talking about the goodness of Trump, but we are talking about the fact that Trump said that he would appoint Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a man of honor, to investigate the safety and efficacy of vaccines. Parenthesis, there is no safety in any vaccine. There is no efficacy in any vaccine. But he said he would appoint him. And so you can add your voice to the public pressure by going to tinyurl.com/vaccine policy. That goes directly to the Trump White House saying, where there is risk, there must be choice. There must not be mandates. I have the legal right to informed consent to refuse any treatment that I choose, and you must make good on your promise. And does it matter? Yes, millions of voices matter. One voice is inaudible. Millions of voices are a compelling roar, and we know that from the times that the globalists have stepped back in their evil programs when we've mobilized millions of people to click the freedom mouse on the submit button and flood whomever we're targeting with their demand that the right thing happen. The globalists do step back. They're not nearly as secure or as strong or as numerous as they want you to think they are. They're very shaky. So we have still the ability to force them to step back and step back and step back if we take our power into our own hands. General Burt's work, my work, will continue as the Natural Solutions Foundation builds and rebuilds. Yesterday, we found out that our sign-up link at drrimatruthreports.com had been disabled. And so nobody could sign up. Nobody could get the free newsletter. Nobody could get the ebook that is your thank you gift. Nobody could get the information about our new site and our new products and so on. Ooh, how did that happen? You know how. So now it's fixed. So I would suggest you go to drrimatruthreports.com and sign up now before it gets unfixed. So I think that answered the question. Oh, what I wanted to say is that clean, unadulterated food has a new function that we're just finding out about, and that is it directs the DNA to repair itself. That's why good diets make you well and keep you from getting sick. And this new nutrient taps into that power. That's why GMO food, toxified food, fake food is such an important weapon in the depopulation program. And that's why it is worth your time, your effort, and your money to source the cleanest food you can and to wean yourself from the poisoned food that is offered to you. It's not really food. It's not FOOD. It's PHUDE. It looks like food. It might even smell like food, and occasionally it tastes like food, but it does not nourish your body, your mind, and support life. You must protect yourself if you care about your well-being, and you must protect your family with real, honest-to-God food and non-fluoridated water.
Okay, now it's my turn.
Yes.
All right, you need a rest. And what I would like to ask you, I have some questions from the hospital stay. So you started by spraying this new product that you had been turned on to by the doctor in India, which I'm gathering has a component of nanosilver in it, right?
No, when we market it, we will combine it with nanosilver. But I had a spray bottle of nanosilver, and I had a spray bottle of this miraculous stuff, which I had no idea might or might not work, by the way. So I was spraying these components into the mucosa of his mouth. And that was the only way I could get anything into him for 3.5 months that I thought might be helpful. 3.5 weeks, I'm sorry, that I thought might be helpful. And they refused. Oh, this is interesting. Total parenteral nutrition is IV nourishment. So his doctor, knowing that he was starving to death, they were giving him sugar water, ordered total parenteral nutrition for him. And we together made up the formula. And the dietitian canceled the order. That's wildly illegal. And wrote in the chart, are you ready for this, Sophia? Wrote in the chart, nutrition has no place in this patient's care. And signed her name to that statement of supernal idiocy. That's what they're trained to believe.
That is very remarkable. It's really amazing. I mean, I have had my own experience in a hospital where I was denied real food. I was given, day after day, I was given broth and jello and juice, apple juice. And finally, on the third day, I said to the nurse, I need food. I had just had major surgery. I said, I need food. She said, oh no, it's not in your chart, your doctor's orders, no food. I said, how is that possible? So I called my doctor, who came in, and she screamed at them, and she said, I put down food as tolerated. Where is her food? Get her food. And you know what they told me? They told me, well, the kitchen is closed now. All we have for you is broth and jello and juice.
Nice, very nice. You're a cost containment project in a hospital or in the allopathic system, and what you need is more drugs and more drugs and more drugs and more drugs until finally your ability to tolerate those drugs is exhausted or your ability to pay for them is exhausted. Now, I want to say one other thing about that. I sat in the waiting room of the intensive care unit many hours. I sat with him but sometimes they would kick me out. They made special rules for me, Sophia, where I wasn't allowed to visit with him, although they have 24-hour visiting. I wasn't allowed to stay overnight, although you're allowed to stay overnight with your person. They were special rules for me because I was a pain in the patoot by questioning and by demanding his rights and mine. They didn't like me at all. So I spent a lot of time in the waiting room, and I watched other families being programmed by the doctors to turn off their loved ones. It's the easier way. We'll just put a morphine patch on, suppress the respiration, withhold food and water. It's really so much easier. It's so much better to remember mom this way, the way she was, rather than the way she's going to suffer. And they would say to me, you're a doctor. What should I do? And frequently, I would say, that's ridiculous. You don't have to do that. And the patient would recover, and everybody would be so astonished because they demanded what I was telling them to demand. That could be one of the reasons they don't like me. And sometimes it was the right decision. Sometimes there was no option other than long-term deteriorated, brain-dead maintenance of the body. Sometimes that happens. But frequently, I would say 80% of the time, that was not the situation at all. We were into cost containment. We were into death panels. We were into resource management, and your mom isn't worth my money. And withholding food is part of that.
Right, because it's part of the death culture. But I have this question as well, because I'm piecing this whole scenario together as you've told it. So then you added the vitamin C drip, but that was not done right away. That wasn't your preference right away.
It took 6 months. And how did that happen? His nephrologist, by this time his kidneys had failed completely and he was on dialysis 3 to 4 times a week. His nephrologist was a very reasonable person, and I presented him. He had watched this whole debacle, and he said, but when he has his nutrients, when he gets food, he's recovering. When he's interfered with, he's dying. And I said, can you get him the vitamin C? Because by this time he had been shifted to another hospital where his nephrologist was now his attending. He said, give me some literature. So I went to PubMed, which anybody can go to, and I gave him links to a vast amount of literature that says intravenous vitamin C. And no, you can't swallow enough vitamin C. Intravenous vitamin C reduces the hypertension that kills so many dialysis patients, reduces the anemia that doesn't respond to iron that kills so many dialysis patients, reduces this, increases that, fixes this. I said, give all of your dialysis patients vitamin C. And he said, okay. And then finally he came to me one Thursday, and he said, I've gotten permission for him to have vitamin C here at this hospital. It's not in the formulary. They don't have even the sterile water bags to mix it into. I had to bring that. And I ran off to a friend of mine and got some of his supply and came back that day. And I said, how did you get permission? We couldn't do it at the other hospital. They were eager for him to die instead. And he said, modestly, because he's a modest and very civilized man, he looked down and he said, I had to press a few wrists very, very hard. So he was fighting, as the other doctor was fighting, for simple nutrition. And it is opposed by complex death machinery called allopathic medicine, whether the doctor or not knows that he's part of that system. Be aware. Oh, I love my doctor. Right, good, have dinner with him. But he doesn't know what he's not being allowed to know. And it could kill you. And once inside the system, the lack of informed consent can easily kill you, as it killed my husband.
So how would you define informed consent? It's the consent of the patient to know what is being done to him, or to be given options that exceed the options of the death machine?
It's the consent of the patient to make all the decisions about what happens to him or her, to say yes or no to any procedure, to any intervention, to any drug. I'll give you an example. The cardiologist came in and said, oh, we have to give him beta blockers. I said, no, we're not giving him any beta blockers. He said, but he had an atrial fibrillation episode. I said he was allowed to become dehydrated because the nurse did not follow the doctor's order. And when he became dehydrated, his heart did abnormal things, as anybody's would. He said, we have to give him beta blockers. I said, no, we're not giving him beta blockers. Refused. He said, well, you have 24 hours to agree, or I'm going to the medical director of this hospital. Ooh, he was going to run to daddy. I said, you can do that. In 24 hours, I will give you my final decision, knowing full well that my final decision was, don't you dare. We're not doing beta blockers. Thanks a heap. And they're very, very dangerous, unnecessary, and debilitating drugs that cause the need for many more drugs and cause complications and death. They're a bad class of drugs. And so the next morning, at 7 o'clock, he came in, he sneaked into the nursing station, and he wrote an order for the beta blockers. And the nurse said, but they're going to lower his blood pressure, and his blood pressure is already so low that he's going to have a stroke if you give him the beta blockers. I will not give him the beta blockers because it's medically dangerous. These are specially trained coronary care, critical care nurses, and they have the authority to do that. And the nurse said, but besides, I thought that the family, that would be me, I thought that the family refused beta blockers. And he said, no, they refused, and he made up he lied and said, I refused another class of drugs. And he wrote the order for the beta blockers. And he said, give it to him as soon as his blood pressure is up high enough And then he wrote an order to give him a drug that would raise his blood pressure so he could give him the beta blockers. And I came in and the nurse said, he has an order for beta blockers. I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, Dr. Novick wrote the order for the beta blockers. Well, we confronted Dr. Novick and we said, how could you do that? That's illegal. That's illegal. How can you do that? And he said, and I quote, I was protecting him from her.
There you go. I mean, they will squirrel around and come up with anything because they've been taught that what they've been trained to do, which we both know is done under trauma-based mind control, they have to do what they've been trained to do, and they have to keep doing it or they fall out of favor in the system. So this business of what you were describing, you're trying to get him enough nutrition that he could bounce back, and then their constant interference and this business of low blood pressure being too low, and then I think they give you adrenaline to raise it or some such thing.
It could be adrenaline, it could be any one of a number of different pressors.
So in the end, as he got better, they refused to believe and accept that your modalities were actually helping him to revive and survive, whereas theirs were constant negative and intrusive and destructive interventions. They couldn't see that at all, I'm assuming.
One day, his infectious disease doctor, who couldn't understand why he hadn't died from the multiple episodes of drug-resistant bacteria that clearly were not getting better from the antibiotics because they were resistant to the antibiotics, he couldn't figure out. And I kept showing him the literature on silver and so on. One day, he was standing on one side of the bed and I was standing on the other, and we were all talking. All three of us were speaking. And that wasn't supposed to happen. Bert was supposed to have been dead long since. And he looked over Bert's body at me and he said, why don't we just stop all the nutrients and see if he goes bad?
Why? Why?
And I said, what I wanted to do was leap across the bed and throttle him to death. But I didn't. I said to him, Dr. Velmahos, isn't that rather unscientific? And he said, well, yeah, but it would be interesting. Interesting? It would confirm your system, which is that what I'm doing couldn't possibly work, even though it has.
So it's an experiment. It's a temporary experiment while he's recovering, just to see if your stuff works and if they stop your stuff.
It's no experiment at all. It was to prove that my stuff couldn't have worked by making sure that Bert died, because it was too challenging to his system if nutrients had anything to do. I mean, after all, if you have infectious disease, you have a failure of the immune system. If you feed the immune system, maybe you won't have a failure of the immune system. But if you're an infectious disease doctor, you don't know diddly shit squat about nutrition, so you're not an expert anymore.
Let me run this by you. I've done a lot of looking into sepsis in the last few months. I sent you my Biological Darkness show, but I think it was in the midst of everything that was going on with Bert. But here's a hypothesis. Actually, I think it's more than that. You get septicemia and infections in the body, whether you're in the hospital or not. I'm talking systemic infections. It begins with too many dying cells. A certain cell cluster or cells within a system are unable to maintain health. They're unable to clean themselves of toxins and negative agents, and they die at a very fast rate. We are teeming with bacteria and fungi that eat these dying cells, and they will multiply. When they have a huge buffet to feed on, they will multiply in such numbers that they will produce toxic wastes that then contaminate our entire bloodstream and travel all over. So in the hospital, they give you antibiotics for this kind of situation. And you have mentioned already that certain bacteria now are resistant to their antibiotics. But what they don't give you is the extra nutritive support. They'll throw glucose into you and saline solution, but what can you really do with that? They don't give you the silver. They don't give you the vitamins. They don't give you the minerals. And absent
They
those,
don't give you the probiotics.
right, absent those, you cannot fully recover. But there are instances in which their antibiotics will, give such a kick in the butt to the over multiplying bacteria that your body can get caught up, so to speak. And that's when antibiotics do work occasionally. But overall, these people in these allopathic realms, they don't know how to eradicate the numbers of bacteria and provide the support, the nutrient support that's going to send the person back into the direction of recovering their health.
Absolutely. There are some absolutely hilarious articles in the New England Journal of Medicine and the American Medical Association, British Medical Journal, and so on, that show that if you use conventional antibiotics and you add my nanosilver, my specific nanosilver, which is the one that they used, then the antibiotics, quote, work 10 to 100 times better. Ooh. Maybe it's not the antibiotics. Maybe it's the nanosilver, but they can't even see that. They certainly can't say it. And so I would present this to these infectious disease guys, and they would say, yeah, well, but nanosilver can't possibly do anything. There are 1,000 papers, so it's selective enforcement. They choose what they want so that they can remain expert and remain inside the system, which was, as you say, delivered to them as a trauma-based mind control system and continues to be. So why don't we stop the nutrients and see if he goes bad? Makes perfect sense in the mind of a cult slave.
I'm going to tell a story for a diversion here. I thought of it earlier in the show, but I go to an acupuncturist who's considered to be one of the better acupuncturists, perhaps the best in Southern California, and he is native Japanese. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. He's local to me, very helpful. He is magical. And he told me the story of what he did once on a plane. He was coming back, maybe it was from Japan. It was a long distance flight, and he was upgraded for some reason to first class. And he found himself sitting next to a neurologist from UCSD. And UCSD is a university, but it's also got a medical center, which is UCSD Medical Center, obviously has several hospitals. And so this neurologist was sitting next to him, and they were chatting. And the neurologist was complaining that he had a very bad headache. And so my acupuncturist said, well, I'm acupuncturist. He speaks a sort of Japanese accented English. And maybe I can help you. And the neurologist was poo-pooing that and saying, no, I don't think so. What I really need is, some pain pills, and I don't have any on me. And so the acupuncturist said, well, let me see if I can help you. Do I have your permission? And the neurologist said, of course. So the acupuncturist called the flight attendant and said, can you get me a sharp-pointed object? Maybe like a fork. So she brings him a fork, and he applies this fork to points on the temple and face and maybe neck, I don't know where else, of the neurologist. And what do you know? The neurologist says, my gosh, my headache is going away. I cannot believe this. And so with a simple fork on an airplane, this is what an acupuncturist can do. And the result was that he got referrals from UCSD, tons and tons of them from this guy.
Indeed, indeed. When doctors discover that their system doesn't work and they or their families use real medicine, good medicine instead, two things happen. Either they treat themselves in secret, as with all the doctors who, the cardiovascular specialists, internists and surgeons and so on, who sneak off to get chelation therapy because they're going to take care of their vascular system, but demonize it consistently to their patients, or they, like this neurologist, say to their patients, hey, you know what? There's something else. And they refer their patients, some of whom go and some of whom don't. So it can go either way. But the reality of the reality can't be denied except by the most cult-minded. For instance, all of the doctors were seeing Bert not die, even though they consistently told me, he's going to die, he's going to die, he's going to die. You should just accept the fact he's going to die, he's going to die, he's going to die, he's going to die. One or two said, oh, wow, that's interesting. He didn't die. He's getting better. Wow. And then he would get pushed down, as I said, by bad care, and he'd go back into the ICU because of them. And then we'd have to climb back out. Very few of them could allow themselves to be challenged enough to see the reality. Now, the families saw it, and they wanted to know what I was doing. And they wanted me to consult with them, and they wanted me to do this and that and the other thing. And that could also be one of the reasons that they didn't like me. They sent security to eject me from the hospital one day because I was telling people about this magic nutrient. It's a nutrient, and I was telling them about it. And I gave some of the people there a bottle of it to try with their loved one in the ICU or the CCU or whatever. And all of those people recovered. And so they sent security to eject me because they said that I was violating hospital policy by selling something. I wasn't. I was giving it to them for free. And security came with their hands on their guns. And, it was a terrible thing that I was going to help people. But suppose I had been selling Avon Cosmetics. That would have been fine.
Yeah. I mean, they still might have told you can't do your...
No, there's no rule against it.
In the hospital, they would let you do it in the waiting room?
Sure. There's no rule against it. We checked the bylaws. There was no rule against my staying overnight with my husband. One night, they took him back down to the ICU because they had mishandled him and misplaced the tracheotomy tube and traumatized him horribly for no reason. And so he went back to the ICU, and I went with him, and they said, you'll have to leave now. I said, no, I'm not leaving. He's not stable. They said, you'll have to leave now or we'll call security. So I called Ralph, the attorney, Ralph Fusatola, and I said, what is the law in the state of New Jersey? My reading of what I just found on the internet says that I have access to him, and so does the hospital policy, 24-hour access because he's in the ICU without restraint, and that I can stay here overnight. And that is the law in New Jersey. I have patient rights, he has patient rights, yada, yada, yada. But selectively, they wanted me to leave because I'm a pain in the ass. I am. I say no to things that they want to do. I ask questions about everything they want to do. And I don't agree with most of what they want to do. And so they wanted to call security. I said, please do. I am going to be such a wealthy woman. Please call security. And they didn't. So, you have to be willing to be an advocate and to face them down.
May I ask you this about the informed consent? When an average person goes into the hospital, even if they're surrounded by family members who are listening to what the hospital is considering doing or plans to do, these doctors, they talk a very convincing talk. They will tell you, we're going to give you beta blockers because you've had atrial fibrillation and you need them. But what if you don't know enough to block them and say, no, you're not giving me any beta blockers? What if you're just an average Joe with an average Joe family? Then you would say, okay, I've been informed. This is the situation. This is what's commonly done. And you have no basis on which to refuse it other than perhaps instinct, right?
Legally, you have every basis. You can make any decision you like, whether it's a good decision or a bad decision, whether it's based on science or whether it's based on the fact that the angel Gabriel just whispered in your ear. I don't know. You have the right to make that decision. Now, if you have a smartphone, you have a world of information at your fingertips. They want to give you beta blockers. Okay, hold on 1 second. And you look up on your smartphone connection to the internet, beta blockers, adverse events, natural alternatives to beta blockers. Are beta blockers safe? You look up any search phrase you want. And then you say to the doctor, yeah, but what about this? Ooh, I see that we could use arginine and taurine. We could give 12 grams of taurine a day. 16 grams of taurine and 12 grams of arginine a day. And that has an 80% success rate where the beta blocker in this particular case has a 4% success rate. And there are toxicities to the beta blockers, but no toxicities to the amino acids. Why don't we do that? And that takes 5 minutes.
Well, that's a very helpful suggestion, even though a person like me would not be carrying around a smartphone. But in this situation, I might, because you do want that information world at your fingertips, but you have to be smart enough to type in either adverse effects or are they safe, not just type in beta blockers, because then you'll get the whole mainstream side of it first.
But there's another more prudent, more protective thing to do. I'm going to give you 2 websites. You need to go to both of these websites at your leisure without any medical emergency facing you, preferably, but with a medical emergency facing you if necessary, or a medical situation. And you need to go to the locator, and you need to find a doctor, an MD, a DO, another licensed healthcare provider in your area who practices natural medicine, who practices nutritional medicine, who practices good medicine. And that should be your primary care physician, or if not your primary care physician, at least your consultant, second opinion physician. The first website is www.AAEM.com. That's for the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, AAEM.com. And the second is the website for the American College for the Advancement of Medicine, which is www.acam.org. Many doctors belong to both organizations. Some belong to only one, some belong to the other. These are 2 organizations that have people who have been trained in nutritional medicine, who have been trained in environmental and natural medicine. They have their licenses, as I do. I'm licensed in 3 states, Sophia. They have their trauma-based mind games that obviously didn't work too well for them, or their life experience undid their trauma-based training. And they've said, wait, there's a better way. And they've taken advanced training in that better way. And they know how to practice good medicine. You'll find a doctor in your area, or you can have a consultation with me, or you can set up a long-distance consultation with the doctor that appeals to you from this set of resources, AAEM.com and ACAM.org. These are life-saving resources that I just gave to you. If you use them, nothing will save your life if you don't use it.
Well, those are excellent references. Thank you so much. I'm going to be sure to put those in the show description, and I'm sure that lots of people have followed this show to the end, and they will catch them as well. So, thank you so much. This has been a very edifying story that we've heard, and I'm sorry that it ended the way that it did, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to carry on with the spirit of General Bert Stubblebine right behind you.
Well, I can carry on with the support of the people who know about this. We are, in fact, a donation organization. I don't know if you've ever heard of Operation Choke Point, but the White House, the Obama White House, directed the extra-legal, unconstitutional financial assault on organizations like ours that criticize government policy. Our bank accounts were emptied out. Our ability to accept credit cards for our wonderful products and for donations was killed. So we're recovering from that. That happened 4 times. And if you care about this, you need to do a couple of things. One is you need an advanced vaccine directive card. You really do. And in a few days, there'll be a new website, which is drrimarecommends.com, DRRIMA recommends.com, where you'll be able to go and use credit cards, at least for a while, to make these purchases. You can get the silver there, you can get the advanced vaccine directive cards, and you can make donations. Why is it important for you to spend your money on an organization like ours? Because we're fighting for your life. We're fighting for your freedom, for your informed consent, for your free flow of information. And it's in your self-interest to protect those things for yourself and the people you care about. That's Dr. Rima, truthreports.com, and in a few days, drrimarecommends.com.
Well, thank you again. I'm sure by the time the show is posted and people start listening, that second website will be up and ready.
Oh, super.
Yeah, and people must, I think people realize that they have to give of their own energy, which is in the form of money. It can be very helpful in that form. When we're getting free information from people like Dr. Rima Laibow and others whom I have interviewed, I mean, it's up to anyone and everyone to decide who they want to give support to in the form of a donation. But it's always nice to periodically donate to somebody. I just received a very, very kind donation from someone, and it was a shock. It was absolutely a shock, but it was a good one. Good shock. So I would very much want you to benefit in this way, and other guests that I interview as well. And listeners this is where you have the power to make a decision and put a little heart in one chest 1 month, a little more in another chest, another month, and these are our donation chests that I'm talking about. Everybody that, we consult on the internet, even though we're silent and invisible and we're just listening, they are giving their time, they are giving their expertise, and it's taken them a lifetime to build that up. Right, Dr. Rima Laibow?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no question about that. And let me also say, let me remind folks that if they would like a medical consultation with me, I am more than happy to do that. My email is releyes3@gmail.com, and just put the word consult as the subject, and I'll send you the necessary information, and we'll make those arrangements.
Well, I hope people will do that and will benefit. I always learn so much from you, and this story that you've just given us today has been very, very edifying, especially the links and the resources that you've provided. So thank you for your time. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you've braved what you have braved so far in this discovery. I'm sorry that you had to be put through such terrible treatment by these people, but it's not a huge surprise, right?
Not at all. The thing that's different is that my eyes are open and my mouth is open. And by the way, that's a really important thing in a hospital, in a doctor's office, in the environment that we're talking about. Say why and say no until the reason makes sense to you. If your heart is saying no, then the answer is no.
Yeah, sometimes though, we're so tired and we're sick, we're hospitalized, we're under the weather, at the very least. And it's very difficult to resist these people, but hopefully your body can speak out for you. And remember that body-mind is the same thing. And if you have any compunction, any pricks and prods from your intuition that they're not doing good things for you, then this is your chance, because later is maybe not as good a time.
Lord Byron, the British poet, wrote, "The saddest words of hand or pen are always these: it might have been." Don't let that happen.
No, and thank you, Dr. Rima, for your help in this regard.
Thank you, Sophia.
All right, well, all the best till our next interview.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and I'm really honored that you've given me the opportunity to share this information with your listeners.
Well, you're very welcome, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Sophia. The Mrs. Hamilton's line in my Avatar Products store is made by a friend of mine, Mrs. Hamilton, who is something of a clean freak. She lived in Hawaii where there's lots of humidity, so her solution to everything smelling like mold, as she told me, was her own non-toxic, alcohol-free, chemical-free household spray cleaner. Made with a base of tea tree oil and organic vinegar, it deodorizes and disinfects with just a spritz or two. I carry the lemon and lavender scents, and you can also get a super concentrate to dilute and make your own refills. Do try Mrs. Hamilton's multi-surface cleaner from avatarproducts.com. I think you'll really like it.